Hi everybody, I'm Loren Lukens. I'm here in my studio in Merced, California with Don Hall, Don Hall Works. I'm going to be doing a demonstration of decorating pieces from greenware all the way through finished work with slips and underglazes. So I'm going to start by decorating this bowl. These are pieces that I made yesterday, and they're all trimmed up. They're on leather hard state. They're wet still, but inflexible, early leather hard. The first layer I use is slip over greenware. And I'm using a slip that I constructed myself. It's my own recipe. It's a casting slip that it's been deflocculated so that it's more liquid than it would be otherwise. It's a really good idea to use a deflocculated slip, but not necessary. So these are the colors that I'm using. I have several of them here, and I'm going to start with my slip recipe with about 10% mason stain added to it. You can buy brushing englobes. They often call them englobes at the store. But for a jar, you pay 20 bucks. I can make a 10-gallon batch of my slip for that same amount. You'd have enough to last you for years. So it's a matter of economics. It's really the same thing. All right, I'm ready to go. I have the slips all mixed up, and I'm gonna wing it here. All right, first stroke. It's a very creamy slip, flows really nicely, and make some nice curvy lines with it. And I don't want that drip there, so I'll just brush it away. Now I'm going to use a different color. I'll use a yellow this time, and make a kind of a parallel series of lines. Really, one layer is all you need with this. A lot of times the ones that you buy at the store, they have other materials in them that make them extend, that make them dry slower. Usually they put propylene glycol or polypropylene glycol instead of water, and that's what keeps them from setting up so fast. And you can do that too. You can make an underglaze that goes onto bisqueware that will do the same thing by using polypropylene glycol instead of water. So I'm going to flip this over and extend this line from one side to the other. So the decoration goes all the way around the piece. Now let's do the same thing with the blue. See if I can figure out where it needs to go. Right here. All right, so now I'm going to use a different color and a different brush. This is a nice long handmade brush made out of deer tail. use a green this time. These are all mason stains. You can pick any color you want that way. Let's see. Do a long, droopy line. How about that? And a big crossover line. Like that. It's not a bad idea to do a little drawing or a series of drawings in advance so you know what you're going to do, because once you've committed to putting this color on, it's kind of there. My approach is a very casual, abstract approach, and that's just my style. And you will have your own style. Okay, we'll extend that line. That's pretty nice. All right, how about something else? We're going to use a different brush this time. And I'm going to do a slip with cobalt carbonate in it. So it'll be a blue. And I'll make do some circles. They look pretty mild right now, but this is a very strong blue. If you've ever had any experience with cobalt, you know that a little dab will do you. Let's see, another one here. That's nice. Maybe another set of these to offset over here. Little balloons. All right, that looks pretty good. Now I'm going to use a different material rather than the slips that I always use. And in this case, I'm going to use a white. And this is an Amico, it's an underglaze, but it's designed to be able to use on greenware or on bisqueware. I'm fairly new to the world of underglazes. I've never used them much in my whole life. I've always made my own materials. So I'm just starting to learn. A lot of you are probably a lot more familiar with what's available on the shelf than I am. But I'm starting to learn, and it's a fun thing to learn. But it's so expensive. I can't get over how much these materials cost. So I'm going to do just a kind of a series of crescents here. You see how this flows out very differently than the slip does. It's, let's see. It's more of a transparent or a translucent look, and it would take multiple layers to coat it completely. I think that's how it's designed. It has material in it that it is an extender. Let's see, maybe I need to put daubs of white inside these circles. That might be nice. Could do that. Yeah, I think so. Kind of making it up as I go along. But it's a series of art marks that I use. Each brush has a certain way of working, and each brush that I pick up suggests a type of art mark to make. That can be a good way to start your procedure, is with the brush. See what the brush does. Play with it on a piece of newspaper and see what comes out. Let's see, I need one more thing here. Another element here. Let's see. I think I'll use a red slip this time. This is back to one of my own recipes. And I'll use, this is a nice brush. This is a beautiful brush, handmade brush. It's probably Martin. And we'll do a kind of a floral thing here. Looks a little bit like a poinsettia, appropriate for the season, I guess. Really nice brush. It's a Sumier style, meant for ink. There we go. And that needs a little yellow center. Wrong brush. Let's try this one. A little yellow center to it. I think that's enough. That's enough. It needs to sit and dry for a while. And I could move on to the others, but I think this is a good enough example of what I'm doing. And now this piece is, when it's dried completely, it'll go to the bisque, and then it's time for the next step. Let's do that next. Okay, we're ready to go to the next step. Here's the decorated piece I just finished. Here it is, finished with a glaze on it. We're going to work on it in the bisque state. This has been bisque, so all these colors are solid in there, and I can work on it without fear of making a mess. So I'm going to start with lining this, doing some lines, and I'm going to use a black underglaze, I'm sorry, that I'm using a commercial version. So this is a Amco velvet underglaze, jet black, and I usually use a glaze, but I started using this underglaze because it's very, very black and it works really good. Let me show you how I make sure that this bottle with this metal tip doesn't get clogged. I'm going to put some more into this, and I think this is an interesting way of working. I use a syringe, and I'll suck some of the material up into the syringe, and use a tea strainer to fill my bottle. So squeeze it with the syringe through the tea strainer to make sure there's no clogs. I do this with everything that goes through a fine tip squeezer. All right, that's ready to go now. right, let's get going on this. Okay, here we go. I'm just putting a black outline around all of the elements that I have painted on earlier, and that really distinguishes them. This fine little metal tip allows me to put a very small amount of material. With the flower, I'm using the black line to do a little additional character building. I'm going to add a few more distinguishing marks at this point. I have some materials here. They're glazes that they're similar to the slips, but they're actually glazes. They'll melt out into a glaze. And this is a red glaze. Let's see, I've got one that's a green. Now I'm going to also use a black line to fill some of this void, just to give it a little more interest. When does just enough become too much? That's a really good question. At a certain point, somebody just needs to take the tool away from me and say, stop already. But it sure is fun. Kind of therapeutic. This is kind of my favorite part of the whole process. It's a very graphic thing to do. And very effective too. Get a lot of bang for your buck. So much in ceramics is not what, you're not getting what you bargained for. So it's not WYSIWYG, if you know that term. But this pretty much is. This is the way it looks now. And this is more or less what it looks like when it's finished. When I've done all this decorating, my next step is to glaze it. And glazing, in most cases for me, involves spraying glaze. And I have a recipe for clear glaze that is sprayed over the top of this. And I'll give you the recipe for that too. It's possible to dip this glaze too, very, very thinly if you can. But you can also paint it on. I know that some people, I've never painted a glaze on before, but I understand that that's something that can be done with a brush. And you could try that too. I have a spray setup, and I really like to do that. I'll show you what that looks like. A plate that I made similarly and painted all the glaze on, biscued, and did the line work. And this is what it looks like after I've sprayed glaze on it. You can still see underneath that sprayed glaze the lines that I put on there, but they're just covered up by a clear glaze, and it'll completely disappear. The glaze will disappear and it'll be a shiny clear glaze. So I've showed you a few techniques for decorating. This is a fairly new thing to me. I'm learning. You can learn too. You can use materials right off the shelf. You can mix your own. I encourage you to experiment. If you go to the store, you'll find dozens and dozens of colors available to you. And there's really nothing wrong that can be done. Well, there's 1,000 ways to dye in ceramics. We all know that. But it's experimentation that gets you there. Good luck. Thanks for watching Don Hall Works. Appreciate your tuning in. Hope you'll take another like and subscribe. Take a look at the other videos that are available.